All right, and we are back here on the GSMC football podcast. And for the third part of the show, I want to recap the Saturday games, talk about those because there's some things to get into, not necessarily with the playoff picture with some of the teams, but also like what some of the teams' futures might be. Well, at least one of them. So we'll get into the first game, and that was the Bengals and the Vikings. So you had Nick Mullins going up against Jake Browning in this game. The Vikings, Josh Dobbs benched. Now it's the Nick Mullins show. And, at points in the game, looked good. Other points in the game, not so much. I mean, he threw an interception. He threw a couple of interceptions in this game, that were costly. Um, you know, and then there were other times where he was like, hey, that was a great throw. Like he was about to get sacked, throws it to Jordan Addison, who takes it to the house. And that was a big play in the game. One of the surprises in the game was Ty Chandler. So there was no Alexander Madison in this game. Ty Chandler had 23 carries for 132 yards and a touchdown. Addison had a good game, 6 receptions for 111 yards and 2 touchdowns. That was the second one. Nick Mullins kind of just threw it up, and he was able to come down with it. So that was a great play there. Justin Jefferson had 7 for 84. T.J. Hockenson had 6 for 63. But yeah, the Bengals on their first drive, this was the first drive of the game. They went down the field, 11 plays, 59 yards. They went up 3-0, almost 7 minutes of time of possession. The Vikings then answered with a nice drive of their own, 12 plays, 75 yards, 6 minutes, 18 seconds of time of possession. Ty Chandler scored a touchdown from 1 yard out, so that put them up 7-3. Both teams punted. Bengals punted. Then Nick Mullins threw his first pick. Bengals punted. Then he threw his second interception. And that was kind of the end of the half. There was actually Jake Browning connected with T. Higgins for a 40-yard pass, and I was listening to that in the car, and I was like, oh, here we go. All right, the Bengals might get some points to, end the half. But then they ruled that incomplete, and then they just ended up running the ball with Chase Brown, and that ended the first half. So then, open up the third quarter. Nick Mullins and the Vikings, they went 8 plays, 92 yards on their first drive of the second half. Down the field, Nick Mullins connected with Jordan Addison for 37 yards out. And I shouldn't say 37 yards out, but yeah, 37 yards. That was the play where he looked like he was going to get sacked, and he got the ball off, and Addison was able to make the play, make the catch, and score the touchdown. So yeah, that put them up 14-3, and I'm sitting there going, yeah, the Bengals got no shot in this game, especially because then Browning threw a pick. Vikings turned that into a field goal. Then the Bengals went 8 plays, 75 yards down the field, and Jake Browning connected with T. Higgins for his first touchdown of the game, so that made it 17-10. Then the Vikings punted. Then the Bengals went 11 plays, 63 yards, 5.5 minutes of time in possession, and Joe Mixon scored on 4th and goal from 1 yard out, and that made it 17-17 all. Then the Vikings went down the field, 7 plays, 75 yards. Now, it looked like it was a pick six for the Bengals to put them up 7, and I was like, wow, the Bengals are going to end up covering maybe. But then there was a penalty on the play. Trey Hendrickson was offside, so then the Vikings, of course, go down the field. Ty Chandler, has a 30-yard run, and then Nick Mullins connects with Jordan Addison for that touchdown, which was a nice play. So that put them up by 7. Then the Bengals went 10 plays, 75 yards down the field. And Jake Browning connected with T. Higgins. And T. Higgins, I mean, he got tackled before the end zone, but he was able to reach his arm out and reached it over the goal line. And that ended up being a touchdown, so that made it 24-24. Vikings punted. And then the game ended up going to overtime. Bengals punted. Vikings turned it over on downs. And then the Bengals got into field goal range, and Evan McPherson from 29 yards out kicked a field goal. And that ended up being the game, and for the Bengals, they improved to 8-6, and the Vikings dropped to 7-7. And I think I saw that. Now I know he was cut by the Vikings, but I think he was cut by the Vikings like I think it was like 2 or 3 times, which that's crazy. And yeah, so he got cut by the Vikings in 2021. And there was a clip of him on the sideline saying they should have never cut me. Yeah, I mean, listen, Jake Browning, give him credit. and he ended up finishing with 324 yards passing, 2 touchdowns and a pick. Jamar Chase, he actually got hurt in this game, a shoulder injury, I believe. So who knows what his status is going to be moving forward. T. Higgins had 4 receptions for 61 yards and 2 touchdowns. Tyler Boyd had 2 for 53. He had that long pass that set up the field goal, which I thought he was going to score, but the Vikings ended up tackling him before that, so that ended up not being a touchdown. He ended up getting tackled. But the Bengals still ended up winning. They're 8-6. Vikings are 7-7. So we'll see what happens. The Vikings still have a playoff spot. The Bengals are in a good spot. Now they got the Steelers coming up, and the Steelers announced that Mason Rudolph's going to start. We'll get into that in a second. Then they got the Chiefs, and then they got the Browns at home. So they got some tough games left on their schedule, so we'll see what happens. As for the Vikings, they got the Lions twice and then the Packers in between that. So, again, Nick Mullins at times, looked good, but other times not so much. So, we'll see what happens. So we'll go to the second game, Colts and the Steelers. Steelers were up 13-0 in this game, and then the Colts just rattled off 30 points. And the Colts lost Zach Moss in this game. Also, Michael Pittman got hurt in this game as well. So you had guys like DJ Montgomery and as well as Tyler Goodson making plays for the Colts. The Colts ran the ball for 170 yards. You had Trey Sermon and Goodson. Trey Sermon had 88 yards rushing. Goodson had 69. Michael Pittman still was the leading receiver. He had 4 receptions for 78 yards. DJ Montgomery had 2 receptions for 48 yards and a touchdown. Mo Alley Cox had a touchdown. Zach Moss had a receiving touchdown in this game. Gardner Minshew had 3 touchdowns. He passed for over 200 yards, 215 yards. He had no interceptions. And as for the Steelers, Mitchell Trubisky just did not play well in this game. 16 of 23, 169 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. And he ended up getting benched for Mason Rudolph. Rudolph played like the final drive of the game, which didn't really do anything. Najee Harris had a rough game, 33 yards rushing. Jalen Warren only had 40, but they just couldn't run the football. Deontay Johnson was their leading receiver. He had 62 yards receiving and a touchdown. But yeah, it's just it was not a good day for the Steelers. They got up 13-0, and this is a team that's desperate for a win. They lost to 2, last place teams, in the Cardinals and the Patriots, both at home. You're up 13-0 against the Colts. You're like, hey, maybe the Steelers are going to pull this one out, and that was just not the case. And now the Colts are tied with the Jags along with the Texans for the division. You got a 3-way tie in the AFC South. So that's going to be something to keep an eye on. Thought the Jags had that locked up. Guess not. Especially now if Trevor Lawrence doesn't play next week. So we'll see what happens there. But as for the Steelers, 7-7, and this could be actually 1 second. Because I'm noticing my camera is been bugging out recently. So I'm just gonna just give me like 30 seconds, and I'll be right back. Actually, I copy and pasted the wrong thing I was gonna do, but let's just bear with me, folks, as I try to fix this here. So I don't know why it's such an issue right now, but and it's done this before, where it like you'll see like it glitching out basically, but yeah, I don't know why it just decided to do this, but let's see if that worked. All right, so hopefully we're good now, but yeah, that's what happens, and I think it's also a combination of the ring light too, because for some reason with the ring light, it can cause it to do what it was doing on the screen there. But yeah, so anyways, back to what we were talking about. So I apologize for that. But anyways, so yeah, the Steelers are now 7-7. It's been a rough stretch for them. I don't know what's going to happen, but there's people talking about Mike Tomlin getting fired, and honestly, you end up losing your final 3 games, which is very possible because you got the Bengals, then you got the Seahawks, then you got the Ravens. Seahawks and Ravens are back-to-back road games to finish the year, which is rough. Yeah, I honestly think the Steelers could lose every single game. I mean, I don't really see anything changing with Mason Rudolph. Um, and listen, Kenny Pickett, is he the long-term answer? That there's question marks there too, which I hate to say because I want to see him do well. But yeah, the Steelers got a lot of question marks there, and they're going to be without Minka Fitzpatrick going forward because he had a knee injury in this game. So who knows what's going to happen there? But yeah, not good for the Steelers at the moment. So um, we'll see what happens. But yeah, so they dropped to 7-7, and the Colts improved to 8-6. So then the final game, we'll run through that quickly. So the Lions and the Broncos. Lions all over the Broncos in this game, winning 42-17. Jared Goff, 278 yards passing, 5 touchdowns, no interceptions. They ran the ball for almost 200 yards. Jahmyr Gibbs had 100 yards and a touchdown. David Montgomery had 85 yards rushing on the ground. Yeah, it was a rough day for the Broncos. Sam Laporta, their tight end for the Lions, had 3 touchdowns. Amon-Ra St. Brown had 7 for 112 and a touchdown. Jahmyr Gibbs also had a receiving touchdown in this game. And then as for the Broncos, Russell Wilson went 18 of 32, 223 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. Samaje Perine was their leading rusher with 37 yards. Jerry Jeudy was their leading receiver with 74 yards. Little Jordan Humphrey had a touchdown in this game. But yeah, Russell Wilson lost a fumble in this game. The Broncos were driving on their first drive of the game. To open it up, Russell Wilson connected with Jerry Jeudy for 40 yards, but then he ended up fumbling. And actually, it was only 7-0 after the first quarter, but then the Lions just kind of ran away with it. Broncos defense just had no answers. Sean Payton was yelling at Russell Wilson on the sidelines. It just it was not a good game for them. Yeah, so they dropped to 7-7. Now they play the Patriots on Christmas, which is a winnable game, but the Patriots got a good defense. But then they got the Chargers and then they're at the Raiders. So I mean, the Chargers game they should win. The Patriots game is at home. That game they should win. So that gets them right now to 9 wins. And then you're at the Raiders, which, the Raiders are not bad at home. So, and the Broncos, they're a team that, listen, they got to play with the lead. Because this is a team that can't get into shootouts. And especially their defense just couldn't stop anybody. But I thought, with how the Lions' defense has been playing lately, I thought, the Broncos, they, were going to be able to move the ball. And that just ended up not happening. So they dropped to 7-7. Lions back to their winning ways. Offense looked great. Jared Goff, the running game. If they can keep that going and hopefully the defense gets better, this team's going to be tough. But, it's kind of wait and see with them. But yeah, that's pretty much it with all the triple header games. Again, I apologize for the issues that I was dealing with my camera. Now it's working fine, but that's just what happens. Like you just gotta unplug it and plug it back in. So yeah, we'll it's just something that's gonna happen from time to time. But yeah, that's pretty much it when talking about this topic here. Let me know what you guys think about those games. So with that, we're going to take our final break of the show. And then when we come back, we will talk about the playoff picture, the current standings after Week 15. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.